how on earth am I going to go from minimum wage to a millionaire before I retire? Now that is an incredibly lofty goal, but one I definitely will achieve. It is going to be tough. I'm going to be throwing some numbers at you guys today about how difficult that is, different percentages of return, different yields, different starting amounts, just to see how feasible it is for me to go from minimum wage at the warehouse to being a millionaire by the time I retire. It's a bit of an eye-opener, and it has, researching this video, looking at all the numbers, has made me very optimistic, and it might shock you as well. So let's get into it. Let's have a look at the numbers and see exactly what I'm going to need to do in order to achieve that dream and become a millionaire. Let's get into it. Right, guys. So first things first, I want to be starting with things that might be slightly out of reach for me on minimum wage. So let's take a look at the first set of data. So assume we get 6% return a year, and I want to be a millionaire in 20 years. Now, in order to achieve this, the amount that we need to invest and never touch again is £305,000. That's a little bit out of reach for somebody on minimum wage like myself. So we're going to have to tinker with the numbers a little bit to try and get that down. Okay, next one up. So we're sticking with 6% yield, but we've gained 5 years. So I'm 35 now. Retirement age in the UK is currently 66 years old. It is going up to 67 pretty soon, and I can see it being around 70 by the time I retire. So I've got about 35 years. Okay, so give myself 25 years, so I'm retiring 10 years early in this scenario. 6% yield, 6% return on investment, 25 years. Starting capital that I would need today in order to achieve that would be £225,000. So we've cut a lot off on that 305 at the start, and all we've done is add 5 years, but that still is fairly unobtainable for somebody on minimum wage. So again, we've got to have another look at the numbers. Sticking with 6%, and this time we're going for 30 years. So 6% return, 30 years, starting capital required in order for me to be a millionaire, £167,000. That's a lot different. Still, I think a little too much, but it certainly is different. But we're going to have to tinker with this again. So the 6% I think might be quite conservative, and we'll get on to why that is a little bit later in the video. So we're going from 6% now up to 8%. So 8% a year for 25 years. So the starting capital that I would need in order to retire a millionaire in 25 years, so 10 years early, retiring at 60, I would need £137,000. Still a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but it's becoming more achievable. I don't have anywhere near that now invested, but it's not 305,000 like it was at the start, but still needs to be tinkered with. So we're sticking with 8%. We're going from 25 years to 30. That puts me at 65. Starting capital required. Now this is a bit of a game changer because we dropped below £100,000. So the starting capital that I would need in order to retire a millionaire, 30 years, is £92,000. 8% a year for 30 years. Now, again, a lot of money. Under £100,000 is a bit of a game changer and shifts the focus a bit, and that does, it is a lot of money, but not unimaginable. Here's where things get interesting. So When tinker with these numbers again, 10%. 10% return for 30 years. Starting capital required, £51,000. So if I invest that and never touch it again, 51,000, all I've got to do is wait. And I am a millionaire. But we might be able to do a little better than that. I know what you're thinking, Steve, where are you going to get 10% a year for 30 years? That's a pretty valid question. But listen to this. So you're probably thinking 10% return a year, pretty insane. Well, some of you might know where I am going to get this. So let's talk about the S&P 500. Over the last 5 years, the S&P 500 has returned 15.5% on average. Over the last 10 years, the S&P 500 has returned 12.5% on average. And over the last 20 years, think of all the crazy stuff that's happened in the last 20 years, it has returned 10.9% on average. There's been ups and downs, but on average, 10.9% over 20 years. Think about everything that's gone on a few years ago, 2008. That's pretty impressive. Here's where it gets even more crazy. So the S&P 500 has delivered an average annual return of 9.96% over the past century. Now, I know what you're thinking, just hold on a sec. It's not been going for a century. Wait a sec. The index itself is overseen by the Standard & Poor's, S&P, Dow Jones, a division of S&P Global. Now, while it took on its present size and name, S&P 500, in 1957, the S&P actually dates back to the 1920s, when it was a composite index tracking 90 stocks. Now, the average annualized return from 1928 to the first quarter of 2025 was 9.96%. Yeah. Okay, now, it's going to get a little bit more crazy because all of the numbers that we have mentioned assume that you're going to put this money in there, put your capital in there, and then never contribute to it again. You're just going to sit there and wait. But you obviously won't do that. So let's assume you're going to do the smart thing and continue to contribute to the portfolio. Assume that I'm going to do the smart thing and continue to contribute to my portfolio over the next 30 years, but only a small amount, £200 per month. So 10% a year over 30 years and contributing £200 per month, you would only need £28,000. £28,000, £200 a month, 30 years, millionaire. Don't get me wrong, £28,000 is a lot of money. It's more than I earn in a year, but it's certainly, I believe, achievable. But here's where things get really interesting. The last little tinker we'll do with these numbers. Sticking with 10%, and we're sticking with 30 years. And that also means I'm retiring 5 years early, by my own estimate. 10% a year, 30 years, and we're really going after it now and contributing £400 a month. You would only need £4,900. Now, that is shockingly close to what I've already got in my portfolio. So now, all I need to do is sit back and wait and contribute.